everybody? It's Kelsee Briana J, and today I'm doing a look and overviewing the new Artist Couture Supreme Bronze eyeshadow palette. And I picked this up from Sephora. So many of you all messaged me about this palette that I felt compelled to go grab it and do a look with it for you all. So that's what we're doing today. This palette retails for $42. It has 12 eyeshadows in here. 1.4 grams of products in each pan, and the description says that with this palette we can redefine the concept of bronze with this lavish palette that's sure to reign supreme amongst the rest. This palette features 6 buttery mattes, 3 richly pigmented metallics, and 3 multi-dimensional high pearl finishes in an array of bronze, cool, and warm tones. Take your artistry to the next level and transform your eyes with this versatile Glow Getter approved palette. So like I said, so many of you all were so interested in this palette that I definitely had to pick it up. Here's what it looks like if you all have never seen it. Artist Couture palettes, I believe, are going to look like this because I have the original one, the Supreme Nudes palette, and it has that same packaging, except for this one has bronze script and the original one has neutral script. I like that little detail. It didn't go unnoticed. I see you. And on the inside there is a mirror, and then here are the eyeshadows. So I want to go ahead and get into it. I want to show you all this look that I did, and then you already know the drill. Following that, we'll talk about my final thoughts about this palette and do a few comparisons. So I hope that you all enjoy. So here's the look that we're doing. Really pretty bronze look with a pop of gold and a little bit of extra gold down at the bottom. So I already have my eyes primed. So first I'm going to go into Toasty. And Toasty looks like a good mid-tone brown to start my eye look off with. So I'm just going to take that back and forth in my crease area. And wow, we are already off to a really pigmented start. So I'm just taking the majority of this in my crease and then I'm gradually diffusing it upwards. So let's just get it going. Boom, boom, bam. And then bring it on up. There you go. Now let's go into Baked and bring it on down. And I learned from the last time just to tap because these are really pigmented. So just back and forth. Here we go. I'm going to go into Shady, which is the black, and take that only on the lid on the outer corner. I'm going to tap it on the lid and then bring it around upwards towards the crease. Just for a little outer crease smoke, honey. This is kind of like a toned down black. It's not the most opaque black. It gives you an opportunity to build it up, but sometimes you need that. I don't see it not being extremely opaque as a disadvantage. I'm going to dip back into a little bit of Baked and take that in the crease again, just to diffuse that and blend it out a little bit better. Next, I'm going to go into HBIC. Let's pop that on the lid area. A little bronze. I'm going to actually pick this up with my fingers. Yes, I could get it faster that way. And then I'll diffuse out the edges with my brush. I'm going to leave a little bit of space on the inner corner. Now let's go into Soleil. Pop that right on the inner corner. Okay. I'm going to go back with my blending brush, and I don't have any additional products on it. I just, again, want to diffuse everything. So just kind of go over the edge of that inner corner color and the lid color and just blend it out. I'm going to take Soleil again and pop that on the inner corner. Next, let's go into Gilded. Pop that in the middle. And now I'm going to go into Baked and then connect it to the top. Boom. I'm going to add some eyeliner and I'll be right back. Alright, you guys, I added a little bit of eyeliner and I had on some mascara, and I'm good with that today. I don't really want to do lashes. I'm okay with going au natural. And here's my finished look. Okay, guys, so we are fresh off of our eye look. Let's talk about my final thoughts about this palette. Let's start off with talking about the color story. And it's a warm eyeshadow palette, you guys. But what does set this palette apart is that this eyeshadow palette includes cool toned eyeshadows as well. So it's not a totally warm toned eyeshadow palette, even though 2 rows dominate the warm tones and there's only 1 row of the cool tones. But in my opinion, I still would regard this as a warm toned eyeshadow palette, even though it has cool tones in here, because warm tones are most prevalent here. And I definitely feel like I have shades like this already. So if you're a person who has collected eyeshadow palettes for the past few years, and you already have your warm tones, you have a few cool tones, then I don't think you need to have this palette based on the color story, because it's not anything that's super inventive. We've already seen this a lot of times before. We already have a lot of colors like this, and none of the colors in here are giving me anything so unique that I can justify having this palette inside of my collection, aside from the fact that I do beauty reviews for you guys. That's my only justification. So if you have all the palettes in the world, all the warm tones, a few cool tones, then you have to figure out if you can justify getting this palette to add to your collection, because there's been a lot of warm tones over the past few years, and I pulled out a few to compare because I know you all are going to have questions. I have the original Supreme Nude palette from Artist Couture. I definitely think the original palette is a little bit more neutral. It still leans warm. It's not a cool tone palette, but it leans way more neutral than this palette does. So for me, I think that the Supreme Nude palette looks a little bit more relevant in terms of how we wear our makeup now and what's on trend. You all already know I had to pull out the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, and I do think that there are overlapping colors here for sure. And in my mind, when I think of the warm toned eyeshadow palette, my mind always goes to Natasha Denona Sunset, because this palette was so iconic during the era that it came out, and it just changed the game. While I don't think these palettes are dupes, I do think that I can pull off the same look that I just did right now on my eyes using the Sunset palette, further proving my point that I really don't need this palette to achieve the look that I did. I feel like I can get that from the Sunset palette, plus have a little bit more variation, and that's where I feel like this palette doesn't really give me that, because it only has 12 shades as opposed to 15, where I feel like if they added one more row, then they could have given us something a little bit more funky, something a little bit more edgy, you know? And with 12, I really feel like they narrowed it down to the absolute basic eyeshadows that you would need to have to complete a bronze-y-ish eyeshadow look. Next, I want to compare it to the Natasha Denona Bronze Eyeshadow Palette, which one of my critiques for the Bronze Eyeshadow Palette was that I felt like there wasn't any variation hardly from one look to the next with this palette, because all the colors were so similar, especially the shimmers. Even though the shimmers in the Supreme Bronze Eyeshadow Palette are more varied than the shimmers in the Bronze Eyeshadow Palette, I'm still going to pick the Bronze Eyeshadow Palette because I feel like the shimmers in here are more modern in their tone. But that's not to say that this eyeshadow palette is not great quality, because it is. I love this eyeshadow palette formulation. The mattes blended out beautifully. The black eyeshadow in here, like I said, it wasn't the most opaque black eyeshadow, but sometimes that's not needed, especially when you add it in an already warm-ish toned eyeshadow palette. You need something that's going to work with the eyeshadows here. So if this were super black and opaque, that would kind of clash with the color story. So there needed to be a black here that was able to be built up, and that's what they gave. So it's a soft black, almost like a charcoal. And in addition to that, the other colors performed beautifully as well. You all saw me pick up this eyeshadow, the shimmering one that I have on my lid with my finger, just because it's that type of formulation that has a little bit of a bounce to it. And I feel like with eyeshadows that are formulated like that, the quickest way to get that color applied is using your fingers, and so that's what I did. And I feel like this shade, and this shade would all apply best with your finger too. But all of the eyeshadows work just fine. It's just, do you need another warm toned eyeshadow palette? For me, it's a no. I know you all wanted to see it, so I got it for you all. You have to decide, do I need this? I don't know. It's pretty, it works, it does what it says it's gonna do. The color story makes sense. All of the colors work in tandem with one another. It's just a warm toned eyeshadow palette, and at this point, if it's gonna be a warm tone, it needs to be the baddest warm toned palette that ever walked the planet, and I don't quite feel like this eyeshadow palette hit that mark, so it didn't really bring anything to the table that would shake it. I still really like Artist Couture, but like I said, if you were gonna buy anything from the brand, get the Supreme Nudes eyeshadow palette. I feel like this one is a little bit cuter. Let me know your thoughts on this palette. Let me know your thoughts on neutral palettes in general. I know a lot of you all are like, I will never buy another neutral eyeshadow palette so long as I live. And I don't feel like that. I do feel like there's a need for new neutral eyeshadow palettes to come out in more modernized, updated color stories, as well as in new updated formulations. Because honey, sometimes you needed an upgrade and you didn't even know you need it, and these companies give it to you. But I digress. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell and become a Kel Belle. And I will check you all in my very next video, which will be super, super soon. Smooches. Bye.